So the first thing you need is a why message. Now, when I work with my clients, we actually create quite an extensive planned giving case for support, which is different than a case for support you might have for your programs or for a capital campaign, because it talks about why a donor should give to your charity maybe 20 years in the future when what you're doing might look a little bit different. You might not have the expertise or time to write an extensive planned giving case for support, but if you can answer that question, like why should a donor give to you 20 years in the future, in maybe 2 or 3 sentences, that's great. That's your beginning why message. And that will help you not lean too heavily on all this technical side of estate planning that doesn't inspire donors, anyways.
Hi, I'm your host, Maria Rio. I moved to Canada as a refugee, used charitable services myself, and have been fundraising for over a decade. I love exploring ways our sector can grow, change, and make the world more equitable. The Small Nonprofit Podcast is where we do just that. I believe small nonprofits are where the most transformative work happens. But we've been set up to fail by systems that expect us to do more with less. Every week, I sit down with leaders, fundraisers, and changemakers who are doing things differently. They're building sustainable funding without compromising their values, creating power instead of dependence, and pushing back on the broken systems we've all inherited. You'll walk away with actionable strategies you can use, not just inspiration. So if you're ready to stop scrambling and start building something that lasts, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. If you're new here, I am your host, Maria Rio. Today, we're going to be talking about how to set up a planned giving program at a small nonprofit. So what is the minimal viable planned giving program that you can set up and still see results? To talk about that, I have the lovely Tess Conrad joining me today. Hello, Tess.
Hi, Maria. Happy to be here.
Tess, for people who don't know you just yet, who are you and what do you do?
I am a expert planned giving fundraiser. I have over 10 years of experience, and my specialty is helping small and mid-sized nonprofits set up and grow planned giving programs.
I feel like a lot of nonprofits think of planned giving as something that's, we'll do later when we get to it, when there's nothing left to do. But I think that's a big mistake. What do you think?
Planned giving definitely falls into the important but not urgent category, but it is important. And it's just so easy for other urgent activities to take place, even if it's something that might have less of an ROI, like a big event, right? That barely breaks even. It takes time and consistency, but it is the path to long-term growth. Right now, we're in the middle of the Great Wealth Transfer. In Canada, the Great Wealth Transfer is 1 to 2 trillion, and that's passing between generations over the next 20 years. In the USA, it's $124 trillion. And of that, 18 trillion is going to flow through to charities. So there's huge opportunities here that charities are just missing out on if they don't prioritize planned giving.
There's definitely a huge incentive to start doing planned giving work. Like the Great Wealth Transfer, if people aren't familiar with it, is basically, the boomers are passing away. They're leaving their estate to their next generation or to, their grandchildren. And these are people who will be becoming philanthropists. So these are people that we can tap into. But when it comes to planned giving, I know that there's a lot of different ways people can do it. You could have your nonprofit being listed as the beneficiary of your life insurance. You could have a charitable remainder trust. For many executive directors, this is a big, deep world. Would you suggest that they kind of look into all those things or stick to something easier like a will?
Definitely stick to the gift and wills. That's where right now about 90% of planned gifts are coming from, and it's pretty easy to fundraise from them. I see a lot of executive directors and fundraisers get caught up in learning everything there is to learn about trust and then just feeling overwhelmed. But if you just hone in on wills and make a few little baby steps of that, you can start setting up your first planned giving program.
Another barrier that I see organizations have is they don't know how to talk about wills and people passing away and getting their money after they pass away. I'm sure this is a problem that you've seen as well.
Definitely. And I mean, it's really a mindset issue because fundraising from gifts and wills is ultimately about connecting with the donor's deepest values and their life story. And so it's about their life, really. It's not about death. So if we focus on that, the relationships will grow much more organically and you can remove some of that ick factor.
Are there any other barriers that come to mind when you see nonprofits thinking about maybe setting up a planned giving program?
Yeah, well, definitely capacity is an issue for small nonprofits because they're already being pulled in so many directions, which is why I encourage really small nonprofits, if they're ready to start doing planned giving, to just think of their basic planned giving program, the minimum viable planned giving program for them to just start a bit. And then they have a foundation that they can invest in later and grow over time.
Okay, so you don't have to have a full program before you launch, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I always say in planned giving, something is better than nothing, but we want to make sure we're doing it well. Also, planned giving, it is about connecting with the donor's values and life story. And really, that's the why behind giving. It's the emotional side of it. A lot of the time, fundraisers will jump to the technical aspects. So they'll host something like estate planning webinars or go into the tax benefits of giving, but that doesn't really inspire donors to leave a gift in their will. And we're not the experts to be talking about that, anyways.
I also feel like a lot of planned gifts maybe come out of conversations with the donor and the financial planner and not with a fundraiser. So you don't have those kind of deep value alignment conversations needed to move that money directly to your organization because it aligns with what they believe and what they've been supporting.
Yes, you just highlighted a huge part of planned giving. And it's kind of funny because I'll go to these planned giving events. Like in Canada, we have the Canadian Association of Gift Planners and conferences. And a good chunk of the attendees are financial planners and advisors, and another chunk are fundraisers. And the advisors who attend these events are advisors who actually care about helping their clients give back. Unfortunately, that's not the majority of advisors right now. So I really see the fundraiser's job as planting the seed because you're not the financial advisor, but if you know a few basics, you can kind of plant the seed. So if you're talking about gifts of, say, stock, there's a lot of great benefits for your taxes for donating gifts of stock because you skip the capital gains tax and you get a tax receipt for the full value of that stock. And I'm not really sure what your financial situation is, but why don't you talk to your advisor about that? You can even send them a little email that they can send off to their advisors. And same with gifts and wills. You can say, you should talk to your lawyer about planning your estate. And there are some tax benefits that can occur when you leave a gift to charity in your will, and you can do it with a specific lump sum or a percentage amount. So why don't you take that to your lawyer now and talk to them about it?
So, one of the challenges that I had when trying to implement a planned giving program was there's a lot of messaging around like minimizing your tax obligations to the state, which to me is kind of in contradiction to my CCF values, my community centric fundraising values, because it feels like we keep subsidizing, the state, and now we're encouraging donors to do it. Do you find that to be effective messaging?
So leading with the tax benefits, no, it's not effective messaging, and it's not something I say fundraisers should focus on. Ultimately, people give because of the emotional draw, and it's the same with estates and other gifts. The emotional draw is what's going to get people to give, and then sometimes the tax benefits will get them to give a greater gift than they would otherwise if it were just cash from their bank accounts. And those avenues exist, and it's there for us to talk about them with our donors. I've talked with some donors, particularly when I'm fundraising for more justice-based and advocacy-based causes, where they actually want to take advantage of those tax breaks because they see what the government's doing and they don't agree with it. So I know a lot of American donors right now are like, I don't want my tax dollars going to ICE. I believe that we should be funding public services, but the government's not doing a great job with it. So I'm going to maximize my tax benefit. There's another donor in Canada who cared a lot about Indigenous rights and planned her estate so she would end up paying very little taxes to the government because she felt like, Indigenous people had basically been ripped off by the government. And that was a way she could direct dollars to where like it aligned with her value. I still do feel uncomfortable about sometimes how much we lean into like, don't give the government your money. And it's not something I want to go into with my legacy giving messaging.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much for being willing to answer that. Okay, so let's get to the meat of the matter because everyone wants to know what is the minimum thing that you need to do to have a successful planned giving program?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you need is a why message. Now, when I work with my clients, we actually create quite an extensive planned giving case for support, which is different than a case for support you might have for your programs or for a capital campaign, because it talks about why a donor should give to your charity maybe 20 years in the future when what you're doing might look a little bit different. You might not have the expertise or time to write an extensive planned giving case for support, but if you can answer that question, like why should a donor give to you 20 years in the future, in maybe 2 or 3 sentences, that's great. That's your beginning why message. And that will help you not lean too heavily on all this technical side of estate planning that doesn't inspire donors anyways.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. I am working with an organization right now, local charity helping kids and youth and adults with disabilities. And we're talking about how these programs will need to continue always. Like, they always want to have a place where people with disabilities can show up and just be themselves and thrive. And at the same time, they're also doing some work around training other organizations to make other organizations more inclusive. Like, it's not just their programs that are inclusive, but these people with disabilities could go anywhere and be included and accommodated. So we have a bit of messaging of like, let's keep these programs going forever. So we always have a place for people with disabilities, and you're funding this work. So we have a brighter future together where there's more organizations that are inclusive.
That sounds great. Question: what do you do if the organization has more of a like advocacy lens? Like, for example, we do policy change and we're working on these 5 cases. Hopefully, that policy changes in the next 5 years, 10 years before you pass away. What do you do in that case?
Legacy giving works well for organizations that have been around for 10 or more years, I would say. So you have that track record. So there's a good chance for advocacy based organizations like that they've advocated for different issues over the years and those have evolved. So part of the storytelling is talking about that history and then where you're at now and then where it might be in the future. So even if we get these policy wins, we're probably not going to be in a perfect world in 20, 30 years. So these are our values that we're standing by, and our policies that we're advocating for then will be advancing these values, even though we don't know exactly what that's going to look like.
Okay, awesome. So, component one is a why message. What's the next component?
The next component is a planned giving web page. And so this is the first place you'll put your why message. You also want to make sure you have your charitable registration number or EIN number in the USA and your legal name and address, because that's also what advisors and lawyers are going to look for when they're designating the gift. And then you want a contact of a person, not like a fundraising at email, but an actual person and their photo for people to reach out to. And that's just the basic components you need for a planned giving webpage. I actually have a guide on how to do this, which includes examples and some copy that you can cut and paste. So I'll provide a link for that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was already thinking, like, oh, so many nonprofits, they have, donor advised funds, planned giving, volunteer, throw in events, all on one page. So I'm already thinking, like, should it be its own page? Should it be a part of a ways to give page?
Ideally, we will have a web page that says leave a gift in your will. And it doesn't say planned giving because donors don't know what that means. And it won't say legacy giving. It will say leave a gift in your will. And then you have a web page for each of those other ways to give. However, for smaller nonprofits that have limited capacity and limited functionality on their website, it's okay to have just one ways to give page. And on that ways to give page, I would highlight gift and wills, and then I would mention some of the other ways to give on that one page. And actually, in my planned giving website guide, I have both examples so you could see how that would work.
Nice. And thanks so much for catching that. I hope that our listeners caught that too. Planned giving is not a word that donors understand. So leave a gift in your will is a way more accessible. And if it's more accessible, you'll get better results.
Yeah, exactly. And I use the term planned giving all the time too, because I'm talking with fundraisers. But once I'm writing for a client, that term is not going to be on any donor facing communications.
Okay, so far it sounds pretty easy. I have my why message and I have a web page. Great. Anything else?
Yeah, there's two more. So the next one is a way to track your planned giving pipeline in your database, ideally in fields that you can report on. So something like a tag or custom field, whatever works for your specific database. And there's quite a bit of tracking you could do in an advanced program. But if you're just beginning, have a way to track who has told you about a gift in their will, who said that they're interested in maybe leaving a gift, and then who has declined. And then with those fields, make sure that you're cultivating and stewarding those donors, even if they don't give in that one particular year, because these are lifelong relationships.
So you have a pipeline, but by this point, you need to start having those conversations, right? Because otherwise, how do you know they have you in their will?
So this isn't one of my 4 elements of a basic planned giving program, but it is the next step that you would do. And the best way to start is with your existing supporters or board members or volunteers, people who've been supporting your organization for a really long time. Doesn't matter how much they give, it's really about the loyalty. And if you want to bring this up with them, I would direct them to your plan giving webpage and just say, hey, we've made this new webpage and I would love to get your thoughts on it and talk with them about it. Planned giving is a little bit different than annual giving or major gifts. It's a decision that can take years. And you can actually be a bit less direct in gradually bringing up the topic. And that's actually okay and effective.
Okay, awesome. So it doesn't have to be something really straightforward with a major donor. You could bring it up over time, which is great.
Yes. So my last component is having people let you know about a gift in their will or express interest. You can do this through marketing through checkboxes. So the easiest thing to do is if you have any kind of paper appeals that are sent through the mail, is add some checkboxes to it. And it's just something like several of our long-term supporters have chosen to leave a gift in their will to our charity. Is this something that you've thought about? And then two options with I've already left a gift or I would be interested. And then you can follow up with whoever is interested and direct them towards your website. If you have a place where people can just check a box to let you know about an intention or interest, then that's ideal.
Could you put it maybe in the donation form while they're making a gift?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something I wanted to set up with a charity when I was a staff member. And we did have pushback from marketing, which makes sense because, with donation forms, you want them to be as streamlined as possible. So what you could do is you could actually try to do it at the end of the gift on the thank you page and maybe have a form where they can check and then hit submit, or even just like mention it with a contact email as well.
I thought about that too. Like once they make their gift, you redirect them to your other ways to give page. Could be very simple.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of ways to do that. And then on your ways to give page, you could even have a checkbox with a submit button as a form as well. Just always make sure you have someone responding to those or set some automations or something so they don't get lost.
Okay, awesome. So a lot of the people listening right now, they might be in different stages of their plan giving planning, right? So maybe they've thought about it and have nowhere to start. So they're going to definitely get started here, which is great. If they're a little bit more advanced and they have it on their website already, they have a little bit of why messaging. What do you think their next step should be?
Definitely the next step would be to start some drip marketing of your planned giving, the gifts and wills. And by drip marketing, I mean just integrating it throughout your existing communication. So if you have a newsletter, have a section about leaving a gift in your will, make a social post every once in a while. A great way to market your planned giving program is through donor testimonials of people who've already left a gift in their will. This creates social proof. People see that others are doing it and they're more likely to do it. Or it could even just be those two sentences that you wrote about your why message and just say, consider a gift in your will, contact us. And that kind of drip marketing is what helps lead to that legacy giving decision because it's such a long-term planning process for donors. You need to be consistent to your communication and just keep it top of mind for them.
I also am curious because I think you're the only plan giving consultant that I know, which is wild. But what does it look like to work with a plan giving consultant? Do you talk to donors about their wills? What do you do?
What I do is called done for you planned giving. So I help charities who are ready to really grow a planned giving program by providing both strategy and hands-on support. And I can do this through a 2-month intensive for an early stage program that's just starting. I also have a 6-month intensive for programs that want to grow significantly with something called a hand raiser campaign. So that's like campaigns where people express an interest in leaving a gift in their will through something like a survey that's a targeted outreach. And then I also do 12-month fractional planned giving contracts. And that means I'm an embedded member with your team. I might not reach out to donors, or I might reach out to donors depending on how much support you need. It's kind of similar with what you do, Maria, for small shops that are hiring their first fundraiser. But in this case, it's usually a charity that has maybe 1 to up to 10 fundraisers on staff who want a planned giving person, but who aren't ready to hire a full-time planned giving person.
Okay, awesome. Tess, this has been super, super helpful. Any final words for executive directors listening to this?
Sometimes they can get a lot of guilt about it, just like feeling like they're not doing enough. And I just want to tell you, you are doing enough. You can start a basic plan giving program. Just a little bit is better than nothing, but also have some grace with yourself. Be kind to yourself. You have a bazillion things to do, but just a little bit here and there can actually make a difference when it comes to taking advantage of the great wealth transfer.
My partner always says it's like pushing a snowball a little bit, right? Like you push it a little bit and then it kind of builds up on itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I work with clients who are ready to actually start growing their plant giving program. And the ones who have a little bit in place are in a much better position to really bring this up with donors and drive growth once they're there, as opposed to charities that haven't done anything at all. The growth is much more gradual when I start working with them. So just putting a little bit in place will set your future self up for success.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, Tess, for people who want to continue the conversation with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I also have that planned giving website guide, which I'll link to, and that will get you on my email list. Every week, I send out planned giving tips and articles, practical steps you can use to grow your planned giving. You can also email me too if you want to be in touch and if you feel like you're ready for done for you planned giving. I would be happy to chat.
Okay, nice. So I'll definitely link that in the show notes. But thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom with the audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so I will definitely be linking Tess's resource in the show notes. I hope that you take full advantage of that because, this is free advice that is going to be really helpful for your plan giving strategy. As always, if you want to watch this episode, you can do so on YouTube and look at our lovely faces over there. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But that's it for today's episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. I really appreciate you being here today and joining us to have these kind of conversations because it's a hard job fundraising and it's better to do it in community and it's better to share tips with each other. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And we will see you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.